My name is Dr. Jason J. Campbell. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about political obstructionism. I'm going to try and explain what obstructionist stances are and how obstructionist stances work. And I'm also going to be talking about the relationship between political obstructionism and paradigm shifts. So there's really two things that's going to be going on. The first thing is going to be sort of a description of what obstructionist stances are in general, and also what a paradigm shift is. Okay, so this is political So this is political obstructionism and paradigm shifts. Okay, the first thing is to understand in talking about any obstructionist stance, in talking about paradigm shifts, that what we're presupposing, what we're assuming in this discussion, what is sort of pre-existing in the background of this discussion is the status quo. Not only the status quo, but the paradigm that is structured around the status quo. So, first of all, that leads to the question, what is the status what is the status quo? Alright, the status quo is going to be, we'll label it as A, so that we say A equals the we'll say that A equals the status quo. And this border around the status quo, is the institutional support of the so that this border around A is the institutional support of the status quo. So we have a status quo. And in a very colloquial sense, in a very general sense, the status quo is also, in a very simple sense, to be understood as business as usual. Right? It's the institution that is set up to support what the population feels is in its own best interest. Right? So, for example, in the discussion of healthcare, it is the institution that is set up now, the existing current institution that is set up now, right? That institution supports the status quo. What is the status quo? Well, it depends on what side of the argument you lie. Some people will say that the status quo is to support business and to make business wealthy. Others will argue that the status quo now is to support and to protect medical care providers and actually attempt to reduce costs. However you look at the example, the status quo is supported by the institutional support for the status quo. So let me give you an example. This is a very sort of rudimentary example, but before we get all complicated, it makes sense just to make it as simple as possible. Imagine that I'm a young kid and I'm selling lemonade in front of my house on my block. So I have a lemonade stand. And I've taken the time to construct the lemonade stand with my parents. I've taken the time to prepare the lemonade. I've taken time to get the little cups. And I get up early in the mornings every Saturday, and I've been doing this for the past, let's say, 2 years. Every Saturday I get up, provided it's not raining, and I set up my little lemonade stand in front of my house. Everyone in the community knows after a while that, and they almost expect that after a while, I will be in front of my house preparing to sell lemonade to the community. This expectation, right? It's not the actual lemonade and it's not the community, but the expectation that I'll have lemonade ready for sale on Saturday is supported by the idea of the status quo. So, to talk a little bit about the status quo, it is the expectation. The expectation of and expectations of the T-A-R-G-E-T-E. The expectations of the targeted population. There's a population, and that population has certain expectations. Now you can see that the status quo will change, one, if the population changes, right? So if the demographic nature of the population changes, then it changes my expectations. If my expectation changes, then it will change the status quo, right? So the status quo is intimately tied to the expectations of the population. What is it that the population expects from the institution, right? So that the institution itself, and now this might make more sense, is constructed to serve the expectations of the population. I might have gone through that a little quick. So, in a lot of comments in a lot of the previous videos that I go through some of this stuff a little too fast, so I'll slow down a little bit. Imagine, again, I am a young boy and I'm selling lemonade every Saturday morning. And I've been doing this for quite a while. The fact that it wasn't just one instance of me selling lemonade, that it was multiple instances of me selling lemonade, and that I regularly did this, created an expectation in the population, right? So that the expectation of the population was a result of some procedural action that I took. I decided to sell lemonade. Now, insofar as I made that decision, and insofar as I did this action regularly, the expectation that was created was supported by sort of the institution. It was supported by my mom, right? It was supported by my dad. It was supported by those who had the ability to allow me to set up this business. What ends up happening, however, is if there are changes in the expectation or changes in the population, then my status quo has to change. So, for example, if someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, Jason, I know you sell lemonade, but I would love it if you could sell different flavors of lemonade, right? So you might have a very sweet version of the lemonade, you might have a very bitter version of the lemonade. Some people might want to have chips with their lemonade. Some people might want to have chips and a hot dog with their lemonade, and so on and so on and so on." The expectations might change. If someone else across the street opens up a competing, basically, lemonade stand, then what happens is I have to address whether or not they're providing the alternative is providing something different, right? Let's say they're providing a different type of lemonade, right? Their lemonade's a bit sweeter than mine. It's a bit better than mine, right? Now what ends up happening is that the population has basically to make a choice. Do I buy this lemonade or do I buy this lemonade? Okay, so I'm going to stop with the sort of general background and try and make this applicable to political obstructionism specifically, right? So hopefully in the background you have a very general sense of what's at stake here. Okay,